Hello and welcome to Patton's Literacy Symposium and to this session, A Journey to Student Reading Success. My name is Sherry Hartman and I'm excited to facilitate this session for everyone. I think you're going to hear a great story. A few housekeeping items before this session starts. Handouts for this session are found in the Patton Literacy Symposium platform on Schoology, and the session's handouts are within the folder for today's session. The session will be 75 minutes long and is being recorded. The chat feature is off between participants, but you will be able to chat with me if you have any needs. In addition, if you have any questions for our facilitators, you can type those in the chat as well. The presenter has requested that we hold off on questions until the last few minutes, and then you'll be able to unmute your mics, or if you've typed them in the chat, I'll share them out at that point. We'd love for you to tweet out or share on social media all that you're learning from today's symposium. The hashtag for the Patton Literacy Symposium is PALIT Symposium 2020. And so without any further ado, we'll introduce you to today's presenters. Our first presenter is Dr. Courtney Lepore. Dr. Courtney Lepore has been a school leader for over 15 years at the elementary level. Specifically, she has been the principal of the 5 Points Elementary School for 8 years. Dr. Lepore has a passion for creating a structured learning environment with high expectations for both teachers and students. Dr. Lepore truly believes that all teachers have the power to impact meaningful changes in the achievement of their students. Dr. Lepore began implementing the science of reading in her school through intense teacher professional development 8 years ago, and this work has continued through this past academic year. Achieving great reading results has always been a journey involving professional learning and empowering teachers. She truly believes that when teachers have the knowledge, guidance, and power to implement meaningful changes in the classroom, a rise in student achievement will follow. Also presenting today is Heather Lilly. Mrs. Heather Lilly has been a primary elementary school teacher since 2006, teaching kindergarten, first, and second grades. During this time, she has served as a data and grade level team leader, helping teachers gather and analyze student learning data and implement instruction and intervention to consistently ensure that more than 90% of students have achieved their literacy goals. Mrs. Lilly has been trained in letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, and enhanced core reading instruction, ECRI. This past fall, she co-led a literacy initiative to train and implement ECRI, leading Bangor's area school district to their highest mid-year literacy results in their history. Mrs. Lilly enjoys working with her school's literacy team to research and implement effective practices to ensure that all kids can read by the time they leave second grade. We also have Lisa Dente. She has completed 16 years of service and education in the Bangor area school district. She began her career as a special education teacher, servicing students with a wide range of disabilities. After obtaining a master's degree in reading and a reading specialist certificate in December of 2007, she was able to begin her role as a reading specialist in the fall of 2008 at a 5th and 6th grade building. While in that role, she served as reading curriculum leader, facilitated leadership teams in that building, and was an active member of the child study team. For the past school year, she continued her role as a reading specialist, but at the K2 building in her district. She has been afforded the opportunity to attend many professional development sessions in the area of reading, and specifically has expanded her knowledge in the areas of phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency in her most recent position. She considers herself a lifelong learner and strives to help others through her experiences. We also have on deck Michelle Possinger. Michelle is in her 26th year of teaching in the Bangor School District. She began her career as a 5th grade teacher for 12 years until she transitioned to the role of academic coach. Her primary role is supporting literacy and mathematics instruction in grades K to 4. She is also a certified letters trainer in her district. And I think you'll hear that as you hear their story, you'll see how a team can help to make some good positive change. So without any further ado, Courtney, if you want to take it away.
Okay, welcome everyone. And please let Sherry know if at any point in time you need us to slow down or if you're having difficulty hearing us. So you had an opportunity to meet our team, and it has been at 5 Points a team effort. So you'll hear throughout our presentation how a variety of people were brought on board through a very comprehensive plan, and it was a long-term plan of improving a system to allow us to teach reading effectively. So I'll begin by starting our presentation. If I can get it. Okay. So one of the things that we want you to really consider, oh gosh, is this quote here. Is if a child memorizes 10 words, the child can only read 10 words. But if a child learns the sounds of 10 letters, the child will be able to read 353 sound words, 4,320 four-sound words, and 21,655 sound words. So this is kind of the premise behind the shift that we made. So when I came on board prior to starting professional development, we were really what we would have called a balanced literacy school that utilized, lit circles and guided reading, and we had a huge book room, and our results were okay, but we were lucky and we felt great if we cracked a low 70% in terms of the kids who ended the year on grade level. And what we realized when we started to do some professional development was that if we taught in a way that was more aligned to the science of reading, that we were able to get more effective results with our students. So we began the process of really trying to do some extensive professional development with our teachers so that they would understand how to implement those principles in their classroom. And again, it all goes back to the premise that we know that if we teach kids how to decode effectively and we teach them the phonological skills needed for reading success, that we will get more bang for our buck, so to speak, in terms of the improvement that we see in our kids' reading. Okay, Michelle.
Okay, Courtney already touched on that we began this process 8 years ago with intensive professional development. And she pointed out that before this process, it wasn't that we weren't doing anything. We had a targeted intervention block. We had people attempting to deliver interventions. But like she said, we just weren't getting results that we were looking for. We were thrilled if a grade level mid-year hit 70, and then end of year we had a drop. So we really felt like we were spinning our wheels and that we could do better. So it began 8 years ago with that intensive professional development. We needed more hands on deck, and we needed teachers to have that knowledge in their hands. So when we actually started the process, we began in kindergarten and we continued that consecutively through 4th grade, adding on a grade level each year as we went. Now initially, and I'll show you data on the next slide, but initially our data provided results that indicated a really nice increase in the literacy skills of our students. But we got to a point that we knew that we needed more, and the results indicated that we needed that consistency and the systematic nature to take place during core instruction as well. So when we take a look at our data, you want to switch the slide for me there? This is how our rollout actually looked at with our data. And you can see kindergarten was our first year that we did it, but we only started halfway through the year that year. So our end of year results, as you look across, and they're highlighted in blue for each grade level, you can see that as we rolled it out in our first year, we had a lot of teacher training, a lot of focus on what we could do better, how we could tweak what we were doing. And each year we were gaining momentum as we went and we did that. So when you look at the 2018-19 school year and the 19-20 school year up to mid-year, you can see that we were getting good results, and we really wanted to do more and make sure that our core curriculum was meeting the needs of at least 80% of our kids in order to give us that push to the 95% that the data says we should have. When we take a look at 2019, that was in this year, each time that we ended a year higher, we started a year higher than we were before. The types of comments that teachers would give is, I'm getting further than I would in intervention before, because kids were coming in with a stronger base, and that summer slide was getting picked up much faster, and they were able to get further than they were before. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to manage all the controls. So in terms of changes for improvement, this is the list of everything that we have done over the course of the last 8 years to improve our literacy results. And we really took resources from any place we could get them, as long as we were assured that they were aligned to the science of reading. So the very first place we began was with a partnership with Step-by-Step Learning, and they provided professional development based upon the science of reading, coaching and modeling for our staff, connect to the classroom, professional development, and also leadership training for all of our administrative staff. So from our assistant superintendent on down. And that we rolled out in the fashion that Michelle explained to you, which was, a grade level at a time. And during that time, we also partnered with our IU for letters training. And you can see there all of the modules that we provided in terms of letters. And then we took that a step further by sending Michelle to Texas to become a letters trainer so that we could have somebody on site to work with our new teachers as they came in. And then most recently, we formed a strong partnership with Patan. We participated in the Beyond the Dyslexia pilot series last year. We participated in the Enhanced Core Reading professional development both last year and also this year. And then we are participating now in the dyslexia pilot expansion. And lastly, and I think really most importantly, is the district overall took a really strong stance in terms of how they looked at elementary reading. And we used to have 2 sister schools that were K through 4. And our superintendent decided that he wanted to bring all of our K through 2 teachers together so that they could work together as a 9-person team and really create consistent instruction for every student that attends Bangor in terms of early literacy. So this move was critical, I believe, to some of the gains that we saw this year. And I truly believe that if we didn't have this model, it would have been exponentially harder for us to get the results this year when we implemented ECRI as we did. I think the results still would have been possible, just not as easy. So that's all the steps that we took for changes to improvement. And a critical component of all of this was really keeping our community, in particular our school board, in the loop and in the know in terms of what we were doing for early literacy and its importance to the overall improvement of the district system. So from myself speaking to the board, teachers going to speak to the board, having the board come in and do classroom observations and visits so that they could see instruction and see, all the things that they vote on in action has really been critical as well to maintain community support for all that we're doing. So again, this is our philosophy base. So we strongly believe that explicit and systematic phonics instruction is good for all, but better for some and necessary for a few. So every student will receive K through 2 the instruction that aligns with the science of reading. And then for those kids who still need it in the upper grades, they have teachers there that also have received the professional development to continue to support them as their reading grows and develops. And then when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. So we take a very shared approach to students and a very shared approach to data. So everybody knows everybody else is learning data in terms of how their class is improving and growing. And when there is a rate of growth that is not acceptable to me or to the team, we problem solve that together as a group of teachers. So no longer is it just the teacher and myself that have the knowledge regarding how her students are growing. They're all, the entire building's kids, and we all work together to problem solve that. And then the last philosophy that really grounds what we are doing here at 5 Points is that we do not wait for kids to fail to provide them sound instruction based upon the science of reading. So really, when we get to the point where a kid may or may not qualify for special education, our school psychologists will often look at us and say, I don't know what else to add, because we really have layered on so many things that align to what we should be doing, that by the time they qualify, it's really just intensifying those things that we may or may, that we are doing. Heather.
Okay, so as a result, our teachers know the science of reading. So we've taken quizzes just to kind of test it for ourselves, and we're able to answer almost all of the questions, which is so important if you're going to teach reading to kids. So we have a little quiz for you that you can take after this presentation that is going to be linked to Schoology, right, Courtney?
They actually, it's right in the chat box, correct, Sherry?
Okay, so it's in the chat box if you wanted to take it. It's a little bit tricky, but just so important to know the background of phonics and the science of reading. So you're going to want to note your weaknesses and think about the knowledge base of your staff. So coming together as two schools, like Courtney was talking about earlier, was a little tricky because our expectations at our school were very high for us to know all of these things. And while I think the expectations were high, just as high at the other school, not always enforced maybe in the same way. So we knew that we needed to tailor our professional development a little bit as we put our two schools together this year. So take that quiz and take a look at your knowledge and think about the knowledge of all the people in your school. And then what professional development do you need to provide to enhance their understanding of the science of reading? So what else can you do to make sure that all of the staff in your school is able to present these concepts effectively for your kids? And I like this, when teachers know better, they do better. So I can think back to when I started teaching kindergarten and not knowing a lot of this, and now feeling bad as a teacher, 10 years later, thinking, wow, I really could have reached a lot more kids than I did back then. So if you know better, you do better.
Okay, and so now as you take a look at the next slide, here you can see the preventative model of instruction. So as you take a look at the 3 tiers, just take note of the percentage of time that the students spend in each of those tiers, and just scan your eye over that. And as you do that, I want you to think about your answer to this question. Are 80% or greater of your students achieving grade level success from core instructional practices? So just take a moment and answer that question. For us, when we asked ourselves that question, district-wide, we struggled to consistently say yes to that question. We struggled to meet that target. Therefore, we knew we really had to dig deep and look at our core instructional practices and figure out how we were going to maximize every minute that those kids were in that core instruction time block, because they're there 80% of the time. So we really want to make sure that we are meeting their needs and figuring out how we can make every minute count during that core instruction. The next question I want you to ask yourself is, are all students receiving targeted skill-specific intervention to meet their individual learning needs? So when you think about small group interventions and that really skill-specific intervention, is it targeted? Is it flexible? Is it consistent? Is it explicit so that they can really gain the skills that they need? For us, that answer was a strong yes. We were able to answer yes to that, but we knew that it was going to take more, that we really needed to, in conjunction with that really skill-specific targeted intervention in small group, we needed to really hone in on that core instruction practice. So it was going to take all of those things combined, consistently and with fidelity, to meet the needs of all the children.
So you really need to look at your programming and you need to think, is it the fish or is it the water? So is it the children that are really struggling, or is it the instruction that you're providing them? And we really thought a lot about this, knowing we were getting some really good results over the past few years, but wondering why we had such a large portion of our children requiring Tier 2 intervention. So this was a question that we had to ask ourselves when we wanted to improve that. So intervention instruction to core instruction, quote, you can't intervene your way out of a core problem, and there is no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact that you can't read the words. So we knew we had used Journeys 2014, and we knew that it was a fine program and there were lots of components that were working for us, but we didn't have exactly what we needed to make sure that that 80% of our kids were getting that core instruction that they needed.
Okay, so we really knew that we needed to do some things to our core programming that would really make it more robust and more aligned to the science of reading. So we didn't want to take Journeys and throw it out, because we knew that it did provide some things that both our students and teachers felt were valuable. However, we knew that there was weaknesses. So the very first thing that we did, and we started this about 3 years ago, was we increased the systematic phonological instruction that we provided. So we used 2 resources. The first resource is Michael Heggerty's Phonemic Awareness program. And we did provide a link for you. If you're unfamiliar with that program, you can certainly explore it. And then we also use David Kilpatrick, Equipped for Reading Success. So we use the Kilpatrick 1-minute drills in 2nd grade once we complete the Heggerty program with our 2nd grade students. But these, first of all, the Heggerty program, if you don't know it, please research it. It will change the way that you provide phonological instruction. I don't think that there isn't one teacher in my building that does not see that flip chart at this point as a Bible to them. They use it every single day. And it makes this type of instruction very fun for the kids, very quick for the kids. It's fast paced, but it's easy for teachers to use because it's right there. So there's so many selling points of this. And plus, what we saw right away is that as soon as we started to increase this type of instruction, first of all of the phonological measures on our Dibbles scores soared. But what we also saw was the ability for kids to begin to decode words started to increase as well, because they had the skills to be able to unitize. And then, but we still knew after doing that, that we had not seen quite the results yet that we wanted to see. So we really wanted to consistently end the year with over 90% of our students on grade level. So we knew that we needed to continue to look at our core program. And when we did so, we found ECRI. So we partnered with Patan and Heather, who's here today, and Amanda Borger, another 1st grade teacher, went last year and were trained in ECRI. And they started to implement it in their classroom about mid-year. And you know you have a good program when 2 of your finest teachers come to you and say, I can't teach reading without this. So we have to do this. And I knew at that point, we have to. So Patana offered further training, and we were able to get more teachers trained. And then Mrs. Borger and Mrs. Lilly continue to work with our teachers here so that we could have a K-2 system implementing the ECRI routines this year. So that has now become the backbone of our phonics instruction in our core program. And Mrs. Lilly will show you how it doesn't take Journeys away, it just replaces the way that Journeys tells you to teach phonics instruction. And then we continued with our professional development. So we are constantly looking to really improve the knowledge of our teachers, and knowledge that you don't use, or knowledge that maybe you haven't heard in a while. Sometimes you kind of regress away from that. So we continue to revisit those principles. So again, our teachers have attended the Enhanced Core Reading Instruction Professional Development, both provided by Carol Disson at Patan and also through our district level trainers. We partnered with Patan for the Beyond the Dyslexia pilot, again, providing a team of teachers additional professional development in the science of reading. We are part of the dyslexia pilot expansion, and a different team is participating in that so that they can continue their professional development and understanding of reading instruction. We do have our literacy coach here in the district who is letters trained, and she goes into classrooms on a very regular basis to provide modeling and coaching, and also what we call kid coaching, which we'll explain more of that later. And then we have PLCs, where we are blessed to have a structure that allows us to have PLCs that are facilitated by our team leaders, by our data leaders, and by our literacy coach. So our backbone, what we knew we were looking for in terms of kind of meeting all of the markers of really good reading instruction, was we know that we needed something that was explicit. We knew that we needed something that was systematic and something that was multi-sensory. And you will see when Mrs. Lilly goes through what ECRI allowed us to do with Journeys, that it ticks all of those boxes, as does Heggerty for phonological instruction. So when we found those two resources, we really strongly believe that we found the sweet spot that we had been looking for. Heather.
So when we think about ECRI and what we were trained on, there is systematic explicit literacy routines that are taught with fidelity. So all teachers were taught them from reading, even our paraprofessionals, if they were providing any kind of reading instruction, they were trained on these same routines. So we use those. And then the Enhanced Journeys 2014 program is what we use to do that. So ECRI provides the exact words, the routines that you're going to, or that we've delivered, and that's for phonological awareness, phonics, but also for vocabulary and comprehension. So we had those specific routines taught, and they were across all settings, like I said, to any of the trained adults. So this is the daily structure that we would follow for our core program. We were provided this triangle through ECRI. It shows the consistent daily routine focused on the decodable text. So all of these routines are in anticipation of connecting that to your decodable text. So we use the text right from Journeys. It's definitely important for all students, so it might not, some teachers questioned us, I should say, about, you know, your higher advanced readers, but they definitely were able to get something out of the ECRI routine. So whether it was for their spelling or for their writing or improved fluency, all of these routines were important for all students. It's very, very fast paced, lots of choral responses. So we know that everyone is participating. Within this, there is a small phonological piece, but we also had already been using the Heggerty phonological curriculum. So we were able to kind of mesh these two together, knowing how important phonological skills are in the science of reading. And one other key point is that teacher knowledge in the science of reading is such a necessary component. It's very hard to teach a phonics skill if you are unsure of the rules. So our typical ELA block that we transition to this year can be seen here. So we had whole group for 60 minutes. So we would spend about 15 minutes on that triangle that was just shown, you know, doing the irregular word reading and phonemic awareness, introduction of a sound spelling card, some sound spelling review, blending practices and routines, and then regular word reading. And dictation was also a very important piece to that. So then there was vocabulary and comprehension for approximately 30 minutes, and then connected text, so your fluency practice for 15 minutes. In addition to that, all of our kids received daily small group instruction, which was so important. So it depended on where the kids were, at what level, to what skills they would get or what text they would use. So a large majority of our students, if they were at or below level, would use that decodable text right from Journeys. If they were above, we would use it 1 or 2 times per week or per 5-day cycle just to check in and make sure that they were still fluent with those phonics skills that we were practicing. And if not, they could move on to something more challenging for them, whether it be a leveled reader or something coming from the anthology. And then students would work independently when not with the teacher at that time. So they would be practicing whatever skill they needed to be practiced or needed to practice at that time. So Dr. Lepore talked a lot about Heggerty and about how all of our teachers really found that it was so important and really moved our kids. So it was purchased for all of our teachers and used daily. We also had time within the schedule of some students, depending on their level, for either the reading specialists or other interventionists, including our paraprofessionals, to deliver portions of that again. So they're very robust, quick skill drills, going from the most basic to the most complex phonological skills. There are 2 different curriculums if you're not familiar with it. So there's a kindergarten and primary. Kindergarten used with our kindergarten students. In the primary curriculum, we use that with our 1st grade. So we started with week 1. And then in 2nd grade, they would start at approximately week 20 of that same curriculum as a review, and then move on to Kilpatrick's 1-minute phonological drills. So included in this presentation is just a sample lesson so that you can see what that looks like. And then can we click on this link, the last link? We have we can just show a portion of this video, how this continued at home. So this is one of our 1st grade teachers, Mrs. Stewart. And if we could just show, you know, like 30 seconds of this video of how she taped a lesson to continue instruction at home.
Well, not put the love, well. I'm working on it.
So this was a time that students really looked forward to. It was kind of like a game to them. It moved so quickly that it kept them all very engaged.
Good morning, 1st grade. Before we start our
You may need to reshare your screen to get the video.
I wanted to answer a question that was sent to me. The question was, Mrs. Stewart, how many motorcycles do you actually have? Well, I'm going to flip my camera around and I'm going to show you each motorcycle that I have in my inventory in my garage. Are you ready? All right, so the answer to the question is, we have 6 motorcycles in our garage.
Can you forward that to like the middle of the video? Mrs. Stewart loves motorcycles and the kids were so interested in them. So a way to get them motivated to watch these videos was we would always show something from our homes.
Okay, I'm getting there. Here we go.
Slice. Spoon, noon. Say the 2 words. Spoon, noon. Tell me 2 words that rhyme with them. How about balloon or goon? Let's try 2 more. Saw, claw. Say the words. Saw, claw. Tell me 2 words that rhyme with them. How about paw or raw? jump, bump. Say the two words, jump, bump. Can you tell me two words that rhyme with them? How about slump or pump? Think.
I think my internet connection is slow.
So I think you get the point. Just a very, very easy curriculum to use in a flip chart right there for you, the words. The routines build from week to week, so it's very easy to deliver and very easy for the kids to know exactly what to do.
Go back to where we were.
So that was basically what we did for our phonics and phonological portion of our core instruction per day. And then we all know how important comprehension and vocabulary instruction is. ECRI also gave really great routines to follow for these, which helped consistency from one class to the next. So we shared students a lot. We had 3 reading specialists that the kids could go to during intervention, or we would share amongst the 9 teachers and also our paraprofessionals. So if I would say, let's retell it using the seal, they knew that. And if Mrs. Dente said the same thing, let's retell using the seal, they were able to do the same exact thing. So this gave us routines for partner and whole group instruction, which ensured 100% engagement from all learners. There was structure for how to set up partnerships. So you would take your class list, you would split it in half, you would mesh it together, and you would have appropriate partnerships so that you didn't have your 2 most struggling students trying to speak to each other. So there was a great structure for that. Your instruction must be planned and thoughtful. So this is something that was a little bit of a change for some of us. We were used to picking up our read aloud book and just asking questions as we went along, but it needed to be very planned and purposeful, where we selected different vocabulary words and had that ready, or different questions, whether it be for a yellow or a blue partner, which was how ECRI had us divide out our class. And then students must be able to retell a text before they can work on more complex comprehension strategies. So that was kind of an aha moment for myself and the other teacher that was trained in ECRI to begin with, that we didn't necessarily need to work on the most complex comprehension strategies at first, that if they could not retell that story, there was no way they were going to be able to do that other stuff. So these are the 2 different retell structures that ECRI gave us. So we have the narrative retell structure. Any story that would be fictional, we would use this same exact poster. And then the nonfiction retell strategy, each petal of the sunflower was a detail, and then you would list the main idea. It just gave us a very consistent, clear way to retell our stories, whether they were in my classroom or down the hall in another teacher's classroom. And then for vocabulary, we had to choose tier 2 words before our instruction, plan a student-friendly definition that can be displayed somehow in the classroom. We would illustrate the definition in some way, whether it be a picture, a video, an action in some way, so that the kids could really see it and visualize it. List some non-examples, and then lots and lots of repetition of the word, just as I'm sure you've seen Anita Archer in the past, kind of in that way of instruction. And then a consistent review of previously taught words. And like I said, the use of blue and yellow partners to discuss and respond. So we would always have the kids talking about it. And then even to save time, we would not always have them share out, but we would, as teachers, be listening to them and say, oh, I heard Matthew say, and then tell his response. So ECRI really taught us a lot of ways to keep everyone engaged by following these kind of routines.
So you're probably thinking, wow, there's so many benefits to everything that they're talking about. And I'm going to tell you about yet another major benefit to everything that we've implemented over the past, specifically school year. it's been a major benefit to streamline this language across all tiers of instruction, especially being a reading specialist who goes in and out of every grade level, almost every single classroom. Kids are coming to me from every single classroom at various times during the day. We are all using that same consistent language. We were all trained, you can see in the bottom left, the 4 parts of a clear signal. That was part of our ECRI training. And the students and teacher all know what the focus is based on where we're pointing to or touching. The students and teacher know the cue. What is the teacher asking me? Are they asking me for the name? Are they asking me for the sound, for the word? So you can see there in the chart, you know, what's the focus? What's the cue? What am I asking the students to tell me? And then think time. And, you know, for some of you, you might think time, oh, I'm just going to wait and give them lots of time. When we're talking about think time, we're talking about 2 seconds for the most part, possibly 3 seconds, but 2 to 3 seconds, but keeping that time consistent because we want this to move at a swift pace. And coinciding with that is also a swift pace in our error correction. So we're getting 100% engagement, which is amazing. People will come in and out of our rooms, administration, upper admin, the school board, and they're like, wow, every kid is engaged. And that's because of the focus and the cue and that signal, but also that think time is predictable for the students. And not only is that think time predictable, if we hear an error amongst the group, we don't stop and have, you know, 16 different kids raise their hand and try to answer it and keep guessing long. We explicitly correct that mistake right away, and then we go back 2 spaces and we keep reviewing and moving forward as a whole group so that we can keep that active engagement, but also keep moving forward. And they're getting that intense practice, which is really showing great progress. Once we mastered those 4 parts of the clear signal, we asked the teachers to videotape lessons monthly. So each month we picked a different focus for the teachers to hone in on because it was a little overwhelming at first. Anything new is, but we wanted to really refine each step of this and make sure that we were really doing each step with fidelity so that the kids really could predict what every teacher across all settings was going to be doing. So we videotaped lessons, even though that was uncomfortable for some at first. It became kind of normal practice. At first, we reviewed it by ourselves, and we kind of went through the implementation checklist that you can see on the bottom right of your screen. It has all of the instructional components that Heather talked about in ECRI, and all those parts of the signals that I just spoke about. And we kind of did a self-review. Then we moved into peer review, and then even as far as Dr. Lepore setting staff up with blue and yellow partners to get us mixed and working with different people to give some really constructive feedback. And it enabled us to really communicate with each other and really dive back into the manuals and the professional development that we had and say, are we doing it the way it's meant to be? You know, who is doing it correctly? Is it you or is it me? What do I need to fix to make sure we're all doing it consistently with fidelity? Consistent language in our core small group intervention, but even it carried over into other content areas. It carried over into math. It carried over into science and social studies, which was another huge benefit. It just became a part of our regular routine, and the kids really fed off of it. I mean, the kids were teaching other kids through these signals during recess time for fun. They really took a liking to it. And, you know, some people always say, oh, it's so robotic. And it isn't. It's so clear and consistent. The kids love it because they're successful with it. So it really was a huge benefit to have this streamlined language across all tiers.
Okay, so when we looked at our implementation, we really looked at it in terms of these 6 steps. So throughout the course of this journey, we always aligned our schedules. We had time for professional dialogue, instructional walkthroughs, communication with all stakeholders, teacher ownership of all students, and team problem solving. So I'll walk you through what that looked like in our building. So this gives you an idea of what our schedule looks like. So you can see here, this is just a snippet. So we have 9 grade levels, 9 teachers in each grade level, along with a variety of special education and reading. So I took just pieces of it, but you can see how everything aligns so that instruction can be supported and so that students can be shared so that they can get into the most skill-specific and appropriate groups possible. So you can see that our ELA times align, particularly in kindergarten and first. We stack those because, as you know, if you're a kindergarten teacher, sometimes you have kids that come in that need a little bit more than the others because they were very enriched through their preschool program. So we wanted the ability for kindergarten and first grade teachers to work together to do that. And then our intervention times all align so that all of our people can help support and we can share kids during those times. So it really is an all hands on deck approach. And then in terms of professional dialogue, Lisa, this is you.
Yep. So professional dialogue has just become a common practice in our building. We have time dedicated to professional development to increase teacher knowledge of evidence-aligned instruction. We've been fortunate enough to have the partnership with Patan that you heard Dr. Lepore speak of earlier for any additional professional development for select teacher teams for both ECRI and the dyslexia pilot expansion. We are really fortunate to have 2 after-school contracted meetings every month. And, you know, in the past, you may think of these meetings as kind of nuts and bolts sessions of things that really we need to get, you know, information out to the staff, but that is not how we utilize those meetings. These meetings are used for mini professional development based upon the walkthrough data that you saw on the last screen that I showed you with the implementation checklist. Just like we have, we base our lessons and our instruction off of student data, we also base our professional development off of teacher data. So, you know, what did we see on the walkthrough? What were some of the trends that we saw? You know, it's never singling anyone out. It's looking for overall trends to find out where we need to hone in that professional development. So we have offered mini professional development from other staff members who are showing that they're rock stars in that specific thing. Maybe it's a different grade level that is doing one routine really strongly, and so we have them present about it. You know, sometimes it's oh, the whole staff really could use a refresher with this, or this was something that we saw that was really inconsistent. So it's utilizing every minute that we have with the staff in our building, and our building is always goes above and beyond. You know, they're never getting up when the clock strikes, you know, time to leave. They sit and they're discussing with each other how they can really meet the needs of every child. It's truly an amazing thing. And we're there to learn and how can we better ourselves so that we can help every single child. We also have the benefit of having Michelle as our instructional coach, and she is in and out. She's required to come into our classrooms, but I can tell you that every staff member is begging for her to come in to have her observe lessons. And, you know, if there's something that's just not quite clicking or you're not sure about something, she will pop in and, you know, she will sit with you as soon as she can. You know, if your lunch is the next thing, she pops in and she is always there and willing to help. She's you know, a wealth of knowledge, and she's a text away, which is a huge, we're so fortunate to have her because she offers that different viewpoint. You know, sometimes when you're in that moment, you're up in front of the kids, you don't always see things. And then someone else, another set of eyes coming in is like, says something and you kind of have that aha moment where you can improve and make things better. We also have peer coaching. You know, it's not something unusual to see different staff members in and out of each other's classrooms in the beginning and end of the day asking for advice on different things. But another thing that we implemented this year was office hours for our reading specialists. We kind of had designated specific times for staff to be able to pop in and ask any questions. It's always an open door policy, but it kind of gave them a designated time where they knew they could come, and they did, and they asked questions and we troubleshooted together. So being able to have that professional dialogue is not only, helpful to each other, but the kids can feel that too. They can see that everyone's working as a team, and they can see that that team approach is really, vital to their success. So everybody in the building can feel it when we're all working together.
Okay, so then we also conduct very systematic instructional walkthroughs. So the administrative team, and I listed the people who generally participate in those, are in and out of classrooms. At first, I think it kind of gave them heart palpitations, when we're 2 weeks into implementing the new ECRI routines, and our superintendent and administrative team all decided to walk through on that day. But I think at this point, they're pretty used to that. Our instructional coach also goes in and coaches. So there's two types of coaching. There's the mandatory coaching that Lisa was talking about. So I'll identify, based upon my walkthroughs, areas that we need to improve. So a target area, and she will go in and coach specifically that issue and give teachers feedback regarding that portion of instruction. But then she also has requested coaching sessions, which is the bulk of her day. Additionally, we identify anytime a student is struggling in terms of their progress, the first thing we do is look at our practices as adults. So she'll track that student throughout the day and look at their instructional programming across all settings to make sure that it is as aligned and systematic as it needs to be. And then lastly, we really have a strong leadership team. So we take a distributive leadership approach here in the building. So we have 2 data leaders per grade level. We have our literacy team that helps me do the walkthroughs in terms of ECRI implementation. And then we have our team leaders. So every grade level has a team leader as well that is in charge of making sure that the curriculum is implemented the way that it is designed. So we really have a variety of leadership colleagues throughout the building that help to ensure that our reading practices are the way that we want them to be. Heather, communication.
So one of the biggest parts of this is having very clear communication with all of the stakeholders. So with teachers and paraprofessionals regarding goals and strategies to achieve these goals, where we want to identify specific target areas of improvement, just like they were talking about with the walkthroughs. Partnerships with experts in the field to gain insight and steps for continued improvement, whether it was working with step-by-step in the beginning of our journey, to ECRI, to letters. We really partnered with anybody that we could to gain some information. And then one of the biggest things I think that we did this year was our communication with parents to enable them to specifically understand how to help their child. So we would do this in many ways, whether it was through the Dojo app, through phone calls, but most importantly, I think our weekly curricular newsletter sent home to parents to really tell them the skills that we were working on, to give them tips that they could work on with their child so they really understood what was going on. Lots of parents see this as a new way of learning to read. So keeping them in the know with all the knowledge that they need really seemed to help this year. And then communication with the school board. So having them come in and actually see in person what was going on in the classrooms was huge this year.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so you've heard this said a lot in the past hour. It is all hands on deck because student ownership is truly 100% all of the staff. You're going to hear some things repeated, but because it's so important to the success of the students, we all have this team approach. We have common goals from the school nurse to the gym teacher to the reading specialist, the classroom teacher, admin, the school board. Our building literacy goal is to get 90% of students reading at grade level. By the time they leave our building, we want 90% of those kids at grade level. And in order to do that, we have to all own every child. And as Dr. Lepore talked about earlier, it's shared data. We sit at the table together in the conference room with the whole grade level and support staff, reading specialists that work with the grade level, learning support teachers, and we look at every kid. And when I first experienced this, I was just in shock because no child was forgotten. You know, every child was brought up, and everyone in the grade level knew how every child was doing. And not only do we share the data, we share the kids. So it's, you know, I'm just as excited when someone in a different class has made progress because I worked with that child at some point. So everybody really has that shared philosophy that they're all our kids. It's not my kids versus your kids. We really dig deep into the data analysis. We spend in-service days, Act 80 days, diving into the data and looking at instructional planning sessions with all the teachers on deck so that we can really figure out what the needs are and meet all of the needs. We do data review, grade level meetings twice a month involving all teachers. So it's always everybody there, everything up on the screen, everybody's looking at the same things and really figuring out how we can best meet the needs of every child. We also, again, we use those monthly after school meetings for team problem solving, instructional grouping adjustments. So our intervention and our small groups, we flex those groups as often as needed. It's not, you're not stuck in a group for the whole year. As your needs change, you're moving out. We have a shared document on SharePoint that we can go in and we can flex those groups as often as we need to. We even have gotten as deep into the data as analyzing how is the student blending? Where are they on the blending continuum? Are they continuously blending? Are they sound by sound blending? Are they unitizing yet? And really fine tuning those groups to figure out, you know, where is the best fit? And by talking about the kids that we each have, if someone else says, oh, I have a child like that, they sound like they would really fit together really well. And we flex those groups based on those conversations and by that and by using that data. We also have an in-depth child study process. Teachers can refer children to the child study team, and often they're not referred until they have exhausted all the options that they can think of on their own. They come to the table with all of the things that they have tried to help that child make progress. And once they've gotten referred to the child study team, it means they really are looking for a team approach to help problem solve. You know, they're looking for other ideas of what to do. And we have a problem solving process that we follow. And we try to learn as much as we can about the child from the teacher in that few minutes. And then we go ahead and we brainstorm any and all ideas, all out of the box ideas and ideas that, you know, we're not sure are going to work yet, but we put them all down. And then with the teacher, we decide what is realistic and doable in the classroom and what goal can we set for the child so that we can see if putting that in place helps the child attain that goal. And then we re-meet in a month and look to see if what we put in place worked for the child. If not, we go back to the ideas, we go back to the drawing board. And this also creates a system of accountability for the teacher to, you know, go back and really, you know, put those things in place and see if they'll work. Dr. Lepore is going to talk about some individual teacher meetings that we had this year as well.
And then myself and our instructional coach meet individually with each teacher in the building, generally 1 to 2 times a year. And we really go through each student and their progress and what that teacher and the team of teachers working with those kids, what they're doing instructionally to help them make progress and what we can do as a system to expedite their progress. So that is really an accountability piece that I think has helped move the needle for us because, you know, every teacher knows that eventually they're going to be sitting in a conference room with myself and our instructional coach and answering those questions about kids. And what we want to see is that they know their kids and they know their programming and they have a plan that's based on some evidence-based practices. And then we have kid coaching, like I spoke about before, where our instructional coach will go and follow a student and the student's program throughout the day to make sure that everything is systematic and aligned for that kid. And then I will adapt schedules. So no schedule in this building is ever static. We adapt it to meet the needs of kids. So if first grade needs more support than second grade, well, then they get it. And we redo the schedule to make sure that they have the support that they need. And then if it needs to shift back based upon the data, we'll shift it back. So that's always very fluid. And our people who support those classrooms know that. Michelle.
muted.
Michelle.
There we
you need
go.
to- There we go.
There we go. Ongoing, embedded, and continuous support. We've talked about quite a few of these points already, but I think you're getting the idea that all arrows are pointing in the same direction, whether it be those meetings, discussions that we have, the coaching that they have with their peers, the instructional coaching that's in a classroom. Letters training is intertwined with everything that we do. It is continuous and it is supported, and it is the main focus in a building. And as an instructional coach who's worked in two different buildings of the same, same levels, and now I'm working in I have a K2 and I have a 3-4. Sometimes when something is not in line, like one of those things, the structure does not work as well as it possibly could. When you're talking about sharing kids, if the schedule doesn't allow for the kindergarten teachers to share kids with one another, we see the results in the data when those kinds of things happen.
Okay. So now I'm going to share with you, we had the privilege to work with PBS to highlight what this looks like in our schools. So I'm going to share that video with you because I think that it really is a good kind of overview of what we did in terms of a system and a building to improve the literacy results for our students. So hopefully it plays better than our last video. Let's hope.
The card is eagle card. The sound is E sound.
Heather Lilly is working on something relatively new in her class.
It's a shift for a lot of teachers doing different things than they have typically done, even for myself being a teacher for many years. Word. Word.
She's a first grade teacher at 5 Points Elementary in Bangor. The school district has been focusing on literacy over the past several years.
We just sort of doubled down on academics and made academics a priority for the district. And everything sort of hinges on elementary reading to get all of that kicked off.
Word. Good job.
The district launched an initiative in 2013 to help improve reading levels for students from kindergarten to 3rd grade.
If a student cannot read, it makes the rest of their educational career vastly more difficult. So we know that it's really important. So we take the time to make sure that we dedicate the time and energy that we know we need to get them to grade level as quickly as possible.
In June of 2012, 63% of K-3 students were reading at grade level. That number now, 89%.
This is systems change at its best, and it's not a sprint race, it's a marathon race.
Lehigh Valley Reads is a campaign powered by Lehigh Valley Public Media and United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley to get all 3rd graders in the region reading at grade level by 2025. Director Angela Zanelli says Bangor's success is an example for the rest of the valley.
They're part of the community school network. They are a leader in Me School, and most importantly, they changed the way they were teaching their children how to read.
The spelling is oh, not E open syllable. That's a short E.
The district is part of a pilot program called ECRI. It stands for Enhancing Core Reading Instruction. There's an emphasis on repetition and intervention, helping students, small groups, and individually to make sure they understand the content.
It's just making sure that we teach the kids routines that stick through all of the different things that they need to do so that we don't spend every day reteaching routines and that they're able to really focus in on what we want them to learn. Contraction. Good, contraction.
At 5 Points Elementary, students spend 2.5 hours on reading every day. Paraprofessionals and reading specialists support teachers in the classroom.
So it really is all hands on deck. Kids get up, they switch, and they go where their needs can best be met.
It's not just about these are my students, those are your students. We collectively own these students. We problem solve. We figure out what's going on with those students, and we make sure that they're succeeding in reading.
This year, the school district brought together students from kindergarten to 2nd grade in the same building. It's a move that helps teachers and students get on the same page.
Having everyone together would allow us to sort of differentiate and target professional development, differentiate and target instruction, and make sure that all of our students were getting the exact same opportunities as they move through the grade levels.
Play 10.
Teachers say they see the benefits of the district's initiative, better reading accuracy and fluency, as well as better behavior overall, promising signs for students as they go through school.
We're continuing with professional development and the upper levels as well. They need to know the science of reading. They need to make sure that they're identifying students that are still struggling. So it doesn't stop.
What we're involved in right now is really a starting point of an ongoing process that we hope is going to yield great things for the district.
I'm having emails and phone calls just saying, my child is reading, you know, and it's kind of like that light bulb turns on for them. And once they start that roller coaster of reading, they really, you know, they just kind of fly.
Soaring scores for students. The latest performance numbers show 73% in grades K to 3 are at the advanced literacy level. That's the most the district has ever seen. In Bangor, Northampton County, I'm Stephen Gewinmall, PBS 39 News Tonight.
So I think that
The card is eagle card.
Oh, sorry.
The sound is E sound.
Heather Lilly is work.
So that kind of shows you an overview of our programming. I think it shows you kind of the systems change, so you can see that our superintendent is equally as passionate and supportive of what we're doing here as I am, as teachers are. So that whole system of improvement is very, very important. And as that video showed you, really the hidden benefit for all of this was the students we use, Dibbles Acadians, and what we saw was that the students in our blue zone, so your higher level of proficiency, really soared when we started to implement ECRI. So if you look mid-year, obviously we don't have end of the year results, but mid-year, the previous year, only 61% of our students were in the blue zone. We had a 10% increase after we implemented ECRI. So we had 71% of our students in the blue zone. And in kindergarten, you see that same type of increase, and we even saw an increase in second grade, and you know that in second grade you're moving a larger tanker. So we were really, really super excited for even our higher level students. It was great to see the benefit of implementing these really strong routines in the classroom for even those students. So you sometimes might hear from parents that it's repetitive for their high readers, but what we can assuredly tell them is that it's not. Michelle, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just that the comments from the teachers, how astonished they were mid-year in kindergarten that students, that blue zone really stands through, because they were saying they're reading. Like where compared to where they were in the past, that was shocking for them.
And what we know too is that when you look at your blue zone percentage, so if you track those kids in the blue zone to third and fourth grade, what we know as well is that number of students when they are in third grade, the percentage of students in third and fourth grade that score in the blue zone often aligns very highly with the percentage of students who will score proficient on the PSSAs, because they have the foundational reading skills necessary to read that complex text and comprehend it at the level that the state standards ask them to. So that number carries its importance all the way through. So then just to end, I'll end with some quotes. So we have a moral responsibility on our system in our schools that everybody leaves after 11 years, so 10,000 hours of instruction, to be able to read. And if we don't know how to teach kids how to read in 10,000 hours, we need to find out. So we spend a lot of time finding out how to do that well. And then, as Emily Hanford would say, equity and education begins with good phonics instruction in the early grades, and it doesn't end there, but it begins there. So if you don't have that, everything becomes more difficult for students in terms of their reading. And lastly, Steve Dykstra says, research shows that the single most powerful predictor of children's ability to overcome trauma and survive their circumstances is the ability to read. If they can read, they have a chance to find success. And lastly, I just challenge you all to kind of take this cartoon to heart. So the improvement journey has not been easy, and it hasn't been here. So it took a lot of just steadfast commitment to this process and to really making sure that we put the system in place to support reading instruction. But the reward for students has been life-changing for them. And the gift that we're giving our community is very powerful. But again, you can choose the simple but wrong path, but the complex but right path is the one that you want to choose. And believe me when I say it's worth it. Sherry, we are ready for questions.
Okay, thanks, ladies. Your story really exemplifies what that focused structured literacy looks like. So are there any questions from the group? You can unmute your audio and share it out, or you can type it in the chat.
Sherry, I saw that. Did you type in the chat? You asked if we purchased Heggerty for our preschools. Dr. Lepore purchased a copy of Heggerty of the preschool, and we do preschool visits prior to our kindergartners coming in for screenings in the next year. So I was able to take that to our preschools, show it to them, and many of them purchased it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is that pre-K, and one of the participants had mentioned that.
Yep.
And we did offer, actually, Sherry provided it for us when she worked for IU20. We did partner with the IU and provided the preschool letters training to our preschool, local preschools. They came to the district over the summer along with our kindergarten team, and Sherry was able to provide them that letters training as well to help give them the knowledge to provide really sound instruction for their kids.
We did have another question. The data that you show, Courtney, which DIBELS measures did that data represent? Was that based on?
That's the Acadience measure. So we do not, we stuck with the traditional and we moved over to Acadience. And that is the composite score. So your composite score is the most research-based number. So we don't pull it apart unless we're looking at it for instructional planning purposes or to find out where we may need to dig to find more information about a student. But when we report our scores, we report the composite.
All right, thanks. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and share it out. Okay, there is a question. Are you still using Journeys as your core instruction?
Yes, we do. So as really what ECRI replaces and Heggerty replaces is the phonics instruction and the phonological instruction. So we don't do that instruction the way that Journeys outlines it. And then it gives us routines for how we do the comprehension instruction that Journeys outlines. So we still use the anchor text, we still use the shared reading, we still use the leveled text for those kids that it's appropriate for, and we use the decodable readers. And all of the phonics skills that are presented through ECRI, they follow the same exact scope and sequence that Journeys outlines. So it all folds together. It really just supplements Journeys, but Journeys is still the backbone of the instruction that we layer ECRI into.
What I really like about the ECRI routines for phonics and phonological, though, is that it pre-teaches the phonics skill before the kids would ever be expected to read it within their decodable text. So 2 days before that decodable text would appear with short E, they would be practicing short E words within their routine. So that was really great. And then it would also review previously taught skills within the word reading or within the sound spelling. So it really changed a lot of phonics instruction for us.
Okay, we had a question come up is, would you say ECRI is similar to Foundations? This teacher uses Heggerty and Foundations.
Foundations is a systematic phonics program. So I wouldn't say that they're both aligned to the science of reading and to those evidence-based practices, but ECRI isn't a standalone. So with ECRI, you would need you need a program that it's aligned to. So it's aligned to a variety of programs, not just Journeys. but you would need that program too, because it pulls the decodable text from there. And when you're doing the vocabulary routines and the comprehension routines, you're using the vocabulary either from the anchor text or the shared reading, or or you're using the vocabulary from that Journeys outlines, so the words to know. So foundations you can use more as a standalone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll just add in onto that. It makes it, ECRI, one of the things that I've noticed is that ECRI makes sure phonics and phonological awareness instruction more robust.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it just gives it a little more power and provides a little more active engagement for kids.
And what I like, I mean, I've used foundations in my previous district, and really what I like about ECRI in comparison is ECRI really focuses on the automaticity of skills that allows kids to then transfer that into fluent reading when they get into text. So there's a really strong text component to it as well. So everything that you do at the word level and even the phoneme level, you apply that in text directly after that instruction. So that's something that I think is really, really strong in terms of the routines.
I think the routine and the structures carrying over into their intervention lessons are also a huge standout for ECRI. So you're not really reteaching them any kind of routine, you're just using the same one all day long. So you're really focused in on the phonics and not, this is the fun activity we'll do today, here's how we're doing it tomorrow, and really confusing children in that way. So I really think ECRI is a standout in that way too.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, well then I would like to thank you, Courtney, and your team for presenting for us today, and to all of you who attended this session. This session was recorded and will be available on the Patent YouTube channel in the near future. The Patent Literacy team will also be creating supports that are aligned to this presentation, so you can maximize learning for your families and educators.